Hello everyone, and welcome to Monstro City. Today we are going to be looking at something a little bit different. This video is in line with one of many hobbies or interests of mine, other than collecting action figures or toys, and that hobby is working with cameras. As you can see on screen, of a screenshot of what my videos typically do look like, I often do showcases of toys and other strange and nostalgic things, and things I find nostalgic. So if anyone is new to this channel, that is probably what to expect with this content that I do typically upload to YouTube. I'm not necessarily what I would describe as a camera channel, although I do have an interest in cameras. I don't really dwell into cameras all that much, but I do watch videos from other creators that do work with more cameras other than the amount that I do have. And speaking of that amount, I have a second camera that I would like to show everyone, and this camera is none other than the 2014 Sony A7S Mark I. And this camera I have wanted for quite a while. I think it's been about maybe 5 years, technically. The points in time to where I really wanted this camera were during, I believe, the summer or spring of 2024 or 2023. I'm not sure exactly. There's a video from the popular YouTubers known as the Slow-Mo guys to where they hit a piece of molten metal with a cricket bat, and they used what I believe could have been the Sony A7S III with an f/0.95 lens, and they were able to see so much during a dark night. It could have been on a full moon, I think, as well, which makes more sense, because as the ISO increases for these cameras, and with a mix of a wide aperture lens, one of the widest being an f/0.95 lens, it can essentially turn night into day on a full moon, which a full moon typically does cast shadows during the nighttime. It has quite a bit of luminescence from the reflection of the sun. The items I do plan to get for this camera in the near future is a f/0.95 lens, one contender that seems pretty good, that I probably would need to watch some videos on, actually, come to think of it, is the 7 Artisans f/0.95 lens. I forgot the millimeter size. It could have been 50 millimeters, but I'm not sure exactly. It will need to fit with the Sony E mount, as you can see. And then there is, of course, the Bright and Star, I think it was also a 50mm f/0.95 lens, as well as the TT Artisans f/0.95 35mm lens, which can attach to E-mount, but is also for ASPC sensors. So despite it being attached to the E-mount, capable of doing that, it will probably need to be cropped in order to avoid vignetting, and that 35mm focal length becomes about a 52mm focal length for that lens when attached to a camera like this. This camera I have not charged the battery of yet. I probably should sometime soon. Probably sometime today I could do that. It does come with a battery, The only thing that's missing is a lens and an SD card. Other accessories that I will probably need to get is a tripod and an external recorder. I'm fine with recording at 1080p. It saves a lot of storage, but if I really want to see things in the dark with a little bit more clarity, despite there being a lot of digital noise that will probably happen when going at 100,000 or 256,000, I believe, was one of the ISOs. It becomes very noisy, and with an f/0.95 lens, which wouldn't really be that sharp, I would probably want an external recorder to at least record in 4K for some details here and there, despite there being noise. And I'm not sure what brand I'd go for. The external recorder would attach to the hot shoe here. I believe it's called the hot shoe. I forgot what it's called exactly. And then it attaches somewhere into here, into one of these areas. I'm not sure which one entirely, but could attach into this side maybe, or could attach into this side maybe as well. I'm not sure exactly, but for that, at least the connections, like the cable connections, similar to this, but not entirely. A very interesting camera, and one that I'm really happy to have. I don't know what else to really say. I'm extremely happy to have it. It's one of 2 steps complete. Technically, one of 3 steps, because I'll want to have a SD card with me. Here's a little bit of a size comparison from the Sony A7S and the Panasonic Lumix G7 camera. And they're around the same size. The only thing that seems big is the Panasonic Lumix G Video 14-140 zoom lens, which was not really that cheap. It was about $500 when I purchased it. I love this lens. I really like zoom lenses. I probably would get a zoom lens for this camera, potentially. I could record zoom lens footage that can actually be seen, that is not very dark, in big cities with this camera, and actually see everything. This camera, it can see stuff in big cities, but not without the limitation of noise. If you want to film this camera in a big city, you will probably have to use a wider aperture lens, such as f1.2. which I do have an f1.2 lens to show everyone. The TT Artisans f1.2 ASPC micro four thirds format lens, 50 millimeters, and if it's micro four thirds, which is a crop sensor, that equals to about, for 50 millimeters, that is about 100 millimeters. Similar to how the ASPC Sony E-mount TT Artisans f0.95 lens comes to equal about 52 millimeters, other than 35 millimeters, which it does state for the actual lens itself. But since it's ASPC, that's a little bit larger than a micro four thirds image sensor. This is the heaviest lens I do have because it is a large heap of glass, which I think is stacked of numerous lenses in of themselves. I'm not sure how many glass lenses are in this camera, or this lens, but it does some pretty amazing work. For this camera with this lens at the maximum exposure for video that I can go with for this lens and this camera, at the maximum ISO of 6400 with the f1.2 lens wide open for the aperture, and with a shutter speed of 30 without there being too much lag and or visible and substantial low motion blur while recording. On a full moon, this camera can barely see anything. Other than the stars and the full moon. It overexposes the full moon, of course. But it can see the stars. It can't really see anything in the dark in a backyard without artificial lights, such as a light from a phone camera. It can't really see in the shadows during the dark. This one, I am at a very high impression that it can, from video footage I have seen, with an f0.95 lens, and even, let alone a f1.2 lens. That is why I purchased this camera, is because I really want to see in the dark. I want to see the things that our eyes have to adjust to see over time when we are in the dark during the nighttime. This camera can see that sooner than the human eye while the human eye is adjusting. Not to imply that this camera is better than the human eye. It's just that the amplification of the ISO, or the sensor's ability to amplify the light that it takes in, is brighter than the human eye. Here's a size comparison with the Sony A7S and the Panasonic Lumix G7 compared to the Panasonic Lumix G Vario 14 to 42 millimeter kit lens, which has the same aperture of f3.5 to 5.6 as compared to this lens. I like this lens more than this camera, but this camera is more sharp. I forgot which aperture it's very sharp at, but my guess is that since it's a shorter camera and it's more closer to the sensor, it's more sharp because of that. It is a really good lens, but I just wanted to zoom in way more and have faster crash zooms, because I am a fan of crash zooms. And that's mostly why I got this camera, so that I could see further away and I could see wildlife. It can do a lot. It just needs extra lighting for dark rooms and stuff, but other than that, it's a really good camera lens. Here is the Panasonic Lumix G Vario 20mm, aka 40mm, f1.7 lens, which I bought on a website known as Adorama. I bought this camera on a website called MPB. I bought this on Amazon. I bought this on Amazon, I bought this camera on Amazon, and I bought this on Amazon. So, a lot of them from Amazon. This lens, I believe I was not necessarily aware of the condition that it was in. Because there's a category of conditions from excellent to good to well used to average. But I think I may have purchased this camera at the condition of well used or lower than that, because I believe there is sand inside of this camera. I would have to turn it on by plugging it into this camera in order to know whether or not that is the case. Since this camera does stretch and rotate itself outwards in order to focus, there is what appears to be sand grains in between the motor, and the motor is very slow. And also it makes like a weird crunching noise. It's like a noise. That's my impression of the noise. In order to focus. It's hard to focus with it while it's on, at least. It's a little bit easier here, but while it's turned on, I think that's because it's rotating the gears inside of it, and some of the gears may have sand in between it. So it could have been dropped in the sand. It still works, and it still does seem fine, but I think I purchased it in a condition to where it wasn't really the best.
Yeah, where else you gonna get it? Fresh brownie. Yeah, no, I heard.
Also, a polarizing filter is stuck to it, which I did purchase from Amazon as well. And I don't have I think it's called a lens wrench to take it off. KNF concept. I do also have a polarizing filter for this lens, but I have not put it on yet. I'm not sure if I'll use it anytime soon because I haven't used it ever since I purchased it. As far as the more, I guess, personal reasons go for me purchasing these cameras, I purchased the Panasonic Lumix G7 camera because my favorite letter of the alphabet is G, which is 7 letters into the alphabet. My favorite animal has always been a gorilla, which has 7 letters in the name. My name, which is Spencer, has 7 letters in my name. I was born technically on a 7, or with a number with a 7 in it, the 27th of August. I don't know if I mentioned this already, I forgot, but my favorite number is 7. Panasonic Lumix G7. That's the 7th letter of the alphabet with the number 7 afterwards. And also, I was under the impression with Google searches that this camera was really good in low light. I wanted to film in the dark, but it can't really do that well because of the crop sensor. Maybe this camera can do that better with an f/0.95 micro four thirds lens, but I don't really see how different that would be all too much from an f1.2 lens, which can barely even see anything on ground level and with a lot of shadow substantial to it on a full moon night when recording. The ISO, of course, can be amplified on this camera when taking photos, and also adjusting the shutter speed. But I've tested it out with this camera and with this lens at the lowest or highest shutter speed that you can go, which is 2, and it can barely even see anything in a dark hotel room, which is where I recorded that footage in. In a nutshell, this is going to be a game changer for me, and I am really looking forward to using this camera when I can. I will be uploading more videos of this camera while I'm testing it, as well as this camera while I'm testing it, as a compare and contrast of the exposure values, as well as the phone that I'm using right here, that I'm shaking right now, which is the Samsung Galaxy A11, which is the closest thing that I have to where I can record in very dark situations, even on a new moon. But that is only in time-lapse footage of 300x. This camera will be better for filming in real time of very dark situations. Just for the sake of it, here is these two cameras compared to the Florian high definition camcorder, 24 megapixels, still image video. This camera would be good for an analog horror short of some sort, like a short video. It can only do digital zooms to where it skips. It doesn't actually zoom in physically with the lens changing its focal length physically. It's a pretty interesting camera. Surprisingly, I took a photo once with this Florian camcorder, and it could see the stars. Not all stars, but it could still see stars, with there being noise and interference as a limitation. And also, if anyone were to ask me what I prefer with a mix, with video footage, noise or interference, I would have to say noise. Interference would be good for something very surreal, such as like an analog horror found footage film or something similar, but can also get in the way. It kind of is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. Noise can be at some circumstances, but overall, I don't really mind noise. It just depends on how, at least in my opinion, on how you are wanting your footage to look and what context you are wanting it to look in. For me, with the videos I have filmed, I'm trying to make them look very cinematic, and with that, the intention to having less noise with this camera is something that does get in the way for me to be okay with noise. But if I'm wanting to film something extremely surreal with, like, for example, shaky camera footage that is zoomed in, I don't really mind noise in that context. For this, I would not really mind noise in this context. I'm not necessarily looking for cleanliness for this camera. I say that now, but there most likely will be a lot of circumstances to where I do consider that as something annoying that I do want to fix. So there will be footage to where I will try to make it not noisy, and also footage to where I won't really care whether or not there is noise. So it's kind of a little bit of a mix between me. This camera, you have interference and noise, with the lack of seeability in very dark situations. This camera, you actually have the ability to see in very dark situations with interference and noise, especially at 409,600 ISO, the expandable maximum for this camera and video footage. So there could be a perception, I'd have to experience this myself, but there could be a future perception, hypothetically speaking, to where I would be more okay with there being interference and noise with this footage. Here is also what both cameras look like with their sensors exposed. This one is way larger as compared to this one. This has been a very long video, and thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for watching, even if you did not watch the entirety of this video. I'm really glad that I was able to make this video in order to share it to everyone. I'm not sure what the next video will be for this channel. It'll probably just be another toy review or showcase. But this is another hobby of mine, other than collecting toys and also making toys myself. Or just like sculptures or figurines made of silicone and air dry clay. Yeah, thank you all for watching. I shall see you all in the next video.